This is the small section of the complete application that we will be developing over the time. So this is the authentication module. So I have tried to make it as simple as possible. So this is the complete standalone and working module that I have created over here. So for this one, I have created few files over here that you can see. The application starts from demo application. So on the screen you can see the complete picture, the flow diagram of this application. So you see over here the demo application file. This is the first file that's gonna run. Right here we have the main method where we have the Spring application.run method. So that's gonna initialize our application, and we have the application properties over here, and these application properties got loaded into the application as well. Then the component scan and the auto configuration will happen, and behind the scene the web server auto configuration, web application context refresh, and embedded Tomcat server startup will happen. And then we have files over here, right? If I go over JWT filter, for example, you see over here we have the constructor, right? And in the constructor you can see it is dependent on JWT util. So if I go to the JWT util, you see this also has the constructor, but it is not dependent on any other files here. You see over here security config as well. You see the constructor is dependent on JWT filter. So from here you can just imagine the visual connection, like the security config file is dependent on JWT filter, JWT filter is dependent on JWT util, right? And if I go to the auth controller over here, you see over here in the auth controller, it has the password encoder, JWT util, and the user repository. So where is this coming from? If I come into the security config, we have two more bean initialization over here, like bean component, the bean annotation, and that's gonna also load it into the application when the application starts up. That's why you see over here they are all going into the so this particular password encoder is going into the auth controller, and these all sections are the part of the application startup, right? So auth controller will get the password encoder, will get the JWT user, the JWT util, and the user repository, and it's gonna make the application ready state. But you see over here we have few more things that are happening behind the scene as well. The user entity we have over here, the metadata of the user entity got registered into the application when the application starts off as well. And we have the in-memory S2 database. This is for the demo purpose as well. In future we are going to use the real database, right? The initialization will happen for the S2 database over here. And finally the Hibernate, the entity manager factory initialization will happen, right? And the user repository comes into picture. This also happens behind the scene. The data proxy is created actually, and finally the auth controller comes into the picture and the constructor will execute. Okay, and finally the application is in the ready state and it is ready to serve. So if I come into the application quickly, I have added this breakpoint over here into the main method. We just want to see the flow, you know. So in the JWT filter as well, in the constructor I have added the breakpoint. Here in the JWT util as well, there is a breakpoint in the constructor. And if you go into the security config, there is a breakpoint into the constructor, into the first bin, into the second bin. Okay, so let's go ahead and start this application into the debug mode. What we do, we just right click and click on debug and demo application.main method. Let me click over here. Something is running, I think. Let's stop and rerun. Let me take it up. You see over here what happened. It starts from the demo application. For better visualization, let me quickly close all of this file. See over here, this starts with the demo application. let me continue the application flow over here. Now you see over here it goes into the JWT util. That's what we discussed, right? We discussed over here the JWT util, right? So the first component initialization when the component scan happen, basically the component scanning. Okay, so if I click over here, you see over here the JWT filter constructor is running. And then guess what? The security config, right? The security config constructor is also running over here. And then the application flow goes into the password encoder you see over here. If I come again into the picture, you see after the security config, the password encoder. So these are actually happening in parallel, password encoder and security filter chain. So if I resume the application again, now you see the auth controller is actually coming into the picture. And you see over here the another bin, right? The security filter chain bin is also executing. Okay, so that is the end of the application startup flow. This is how all the component scanning process happens and the constructor are executed. So this is the magic that is happening behind the scene in the Spring Boot application. This is the magic of dependency injection as well. Everything we are gonna go ahead and talk about it in depth, and we will talk about all the drawbacks, or what we say, trade-offs that we have over this application, and we will see how we can modify this application to make it like a real-world application. So what are the problems, issues, or complications that we have in these applications, so that we can actually discuss about all of these and make it like a real-world application in future. Alright, I'll see you in the next video.